All right, welcome into the Panthers post-game show. First one that we've done this postseason. It's a good one to do it off of. I want to thank our producer, David Eversole. He's in the back today. Before I get to our two guest hosts today, I want to mention Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. We always pitch in the NBA stuff and the NFL stuff here. But yes, you can play Prize Picks on the NHL as well. You would have had a good time playing some Panther players today on the goals aspect of this. Go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5, F-I-V-E, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. It is legal in the state of Florida again. It's back with an arena game. You can play any 4 players in any sport. Pair them together. It's more of a power play than it is a flex play now. But again, play Prize Picks, use the code F-I-V-E. All right, our special guest today. Got another Alex. I don't know how many Alexes I can take in this network. I've got Alex Lopez. We got Jacob. They're both from – give me the proper pronunciation here so I don't say Panther poutine or something like that. What is this? Okay, there you go. So, and we'll take your comments if anybody pops in here in the chat. We've got Panthers in 5. Certainly they're on their way there. 6-2 win tonight. They go up 4-0. Bruins get a couple of goals. I see Panther fans panicking on Twitter, and then they ultimately pull away 6-2 win. Rodriguez with 2 goals. He had the first one. He had the last one. Bob made a couple of big saves in the third period, and they pulled this thing out. My favorite part of this, of course, is that Boston fans were heading for the exits with about 3 minutes left. We saw Bennett come back today, Alex. We saw them shuffle the lines again. They got him back on a top 2 line. Cousins went out. But, I mean, their energy was tremendous. I mean, they didn't give up, like, their 4th shot until, like, the 24th minute of this game. Why did things work so well tonight?
Why did things work so well? It's because the Panthers are a better team top to bottom. I think we're seeing more and more that game 1 was an aberration. This was – from the second period on of game 2 to where we sit right now, the Bruins have 31 total shots, something like that. Like, this is a Panthers team that is just top to bottom better. They stopped making the mistakes that they made in game 1. Yeah. Ekblad and Forsling were once again one of the best pairings in the NHL. They had a 95% expected goal share between the two of them. When you get performances like that from your top pairing, it's very hard to lose when you're this team and you're playing a team that's got 1 scoring line. They've got 2 goal scorers in Pasta and Marchand. And like you said, Marchand kind of took a bump very early in the game and was not the same and didn't even play the third period. So why we're seeing this is Panthers are just top to bottom better.
They're top to bottom better, Jacob, but what we saw in the game early the other night, I mean, there was a lot of people who were worried. Honestly, it could have been 3-0 after the first period. There was a crossbar hit. There was a missed empty net in that game. Otherwise, you're down 3-0. You're probably down 2-0 in the series. Before you go to Boston, the whole thing flips, and now you score 10 straight goals. I mean, I don't care if you're better, like scoring 10 straight goals in a playoff series against a team that we're only 1 point better than in the regular season it's just crazy. Would you read any? We got Alex Baumgartner joining us here as well. Would you read any momentum into the fact that Boston got their act together a little bit in the third, or no? No carryover.
I wouldn't read I wouldn't read too much into that going forward. Honestly, I think that Boston's kind of gassed at this point. They had a real intense series in round 1 and had to jump right into that second round series against the Panthers. Game 1 was really just the Panthers shaking some rust off, and then immediately you see in game 2 the Panthers just dominate start to finish, and that just continues in game 3 here. I wouldn't read too much into those 2 Boston goals in the third period there. I don't think it's indicative of any extra life necessarily. Not to say that the Panthers are going to win out the series, or not to guarantee it, rather. But I don't think that there's really much that the Boston Bruins are going to be able to take out of game 3, even with those goals. And take it to game 4 and show some remarkably spirited turnaround that's going to change the flow of the series.
You got Alex Baumgartner here. He was at games 1 and 2 there for that momentum shift in game 2. They're not making Bob work a whole lot, right? At the moment,
16 shots on goal. They held them to 16 shots on goal in the
16 shots. So what are they? What are they doing? I'll go to the other Alex on this. What are they doing to keep traffic away from him? Because we talked about the defensive. I mean, the defensive zone turnovers in the first game. They seem to have cleaned that up, and they're not allowing them to get a lot of bodies in front of Bob.
We're gonna have to come up with which Alex you're talking to here. Yeah,
that was bomb.
I'm just call you AB. That's it. We'll do that. We had this issue with Dono the other day too.
AB. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, no. So I believe the Panthers gave up. I think it was in the broadcast that in game 2 was the least amount of shots they gave up in a playoff series. Now I can't confirm that. I didn't remember the shot total, but they've done this a couple times in the regular season where their defense kind of swarms guys in the corners, and they got bigger in the offseason. They brought in Mikkola. They brought in OEL. They play heavy games on the boards, heavier in the corners, and the Panthers forwards all come back and they kind of sit a little deeper in the zone than some other teams, and they kind of just collapse on guys. So even if Boston can slip the puck through the seams in the slot, I mean, there's absolutely no way they're getting those pucks. Now, they did get a couple chances in the third, but you kind of expected that every team's going to have a little bit of a pushback. Florida did it in game 4 against Tampa when they were down by 4 or 3, excuse me. But, I mean, Mikkola got a penalty for just strong-arming a guy. I mean, that's just kind of what they do all the time. Panthers are very, very physical in front of the net, and they kind of clog it. You're not getting too many passes through the middle of the slot because they're going to clear it out or you're going to end up on your ass.
Yeah, to that point, there was a lot of talk about the physicality, and then of course Bennett comes back and makes an immediate impact. I'll go up to AL on the top left here. How significant was his return in your view?
I mean, it was definitely significant. Not that the Panthers needed an emotional bump, but first shift of the game, you knock out Marchand, potentially take him out of the series on a clean hit, and then 30 seconds later, you'll lay a huge hit on Pastrnak, the two best players in this series, the two players that Boston needs if they want to have a prayer of winning this series. And you come in and on your first shift, lay them both out. And that set the tone for the rest of the game. Boston kept trying to, be the prototypical Boston team you're used to and start the feisting, start the chippiness. And the Panthers said, bring it. We're better at this than you are. And Bennett did that and set the tone for the whole game with those two hits.
Jacob, as we go forward here and we look at kind of what needs to happen, in the rest of the series. First thing, Barkov's been the best player on the ice, right?
Oh,
like we
easily.
in agreement. Right. Well, yeah, but Jacob, Alex and I were talking about this on playback before the game that there was a narrative before about him in the postseason. I feel like that's been completely erased at this stage. Is there anybody that you're looking at on the Panther roster now that you're saying, okay, this guy needs to step up going forward?
With Bennett back, I don't think so, because the other impact of his return is, we saw in at the beginning of game 2, the beginning of game or most of game 1, the lines were a little top heavy. You had that top line, that killer top line of Verhaeghe, Barkov, Tkachuk. But the bottom 9 beyond that, you're overloading your top line there and kind of taking away from the killer ability of the bottom 9. The Bennett return really allows you to respread that depth out. And I mean, Lawrence and Okposo have both been fantastic in their depth roles. Kevin Stenlund has been super consistent all season. So the one guy that I would have otherwise said, this is a player that I could use a little more from. He's the guy who was riding the press box tonight, Nick Cousins. If you really pushed me, I mean, I'm not even going to hone in on a game performance. I'm going to hone in on a single play, and I'm going to put that onus on Dmitry Kulikov, who that first Boston goal. I actually don't remember if it was the first or second, but it was the 3-on-1 goal that would have been a normal defensive shift if Kulikov hadn't run into a teammate to take out two Panthers in one shot and allow that 3-on-1 to happen. So if you really press me, I would probably say Kulikov. But even that, there was really only one time tonight where I could look at Dmitry Kulikov and say that wasn't good enough.
And then he saved the 4-3 goal with his ankle.
Right.
So he made up for it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, because things would have gotten dicey there in the last 4 minutes if that had gone in. One of my concerns about this series, because we do know that the leagues have certain preferences on matchups and markets. One of my concerns on this series was the NHL was going to basically lean towards getting what they're likely going to get in the NBA, which is Boston, New York, in the next round, and then have that kind of double where you've got both playing each other, which is one of the reasons why I don't think the Panthers can leave this thing to chance, honestly. And honestly, I didn't. There was a lot of concern. I'll go to Alex B on this. There was a lot of concern before the game about who the officials were tonight, who the referee was. Right, there's a history here. But I didn't feel like the Panthers got a bad whistle. They had the majority of the power plays, and I mean, they forced the action. They should have gotten the better whistle, but it felt like they got it.
No, there's obviously penalties in games that are clear. Now, sometimes a high stick might go away, and they'll look the other way. I mean, there's obviously history between Maurice and Saint Laurent. So when that the refereeing lineup came out, some people were kind of, ooh. Now, also, in the NHL playoffs, these guys get evaluated every round. So certain officials won't, like Luxmore, who is a ref that people know, especially specifically in Florida, people know TJ Luxmore. He did not make it to round 2. So they're under heavy scrutiny as well to make the right calls. So I wasn't expecting an outrageous game in favor of one side or the other, and I thought it was a very evenly called game. Maybe that Ekblad penalty where Lalko went into the goalie probably should have either been no penalty or they both should have gone. That was probably the only questionable one, and that's favoring the Panthers because they scored on the Montour power play. But honestly, the officiating hasn't been bad.
Montour, that was quite a shot there. I want to go back, Alex, up top to the Rodriguez goal early. Any concerns on that got things going? Any concerns on that might have been a high stick?
I mean, it's the NHL, which has the worst replay setups ever. So, you really couldn't tell. It was really close. I'm shocked they did not review it. I thought that was one that was going to be whatever the call on the ice was going to stand. But yeah, that one, I was definitely concerned when it went in the net. I was like, ooh, this is going to be close. But then when they dropped the puck, I was like, all right, I'll take it. Just to echo what Baum said, the officiating wasn't the story tonight, even though we were all surprised when we saw that pairing announced.
We appreciate those that are in the live comments here. We've got our guy Joe Harari there, so I do want to mention jerseys305.com. That's one of our sponsors here on the network. Plenty of Panther jerseys on there. He dropped a new Bure one there, so check that out beyond just the Heat and Dolphins stuff. Mike in West Palm Beach, go look at all the Bruins fans crying about the refs when they had 8 shots on goal through 2 periods. Again, for those that are expecting NBA content from me, that's like basically taking a bunch of threes and expecting to get the line a whole ton of times. So it doesn't happen very much. And then Jason had to throw this in. Tyler played like shit and Bam needs help. Wait, what? Ethan is in here throwing me off. I guess Alex has the Kachuk Butler has just shirt up there, so we actually should address this. I do feel like there are some similarities here, though, in the sense that I don't know, this Bruins team. I'm actually kind of surprised that they actually closed out Toronto in the last round. Although I know the Leafs have a habit of choking these things also, but I don't know, they don't seem like I guess I was expecting more from them today. Your best player, basically gets into a fight, which he was overmatched. There's all this talk about the chippy play, and then they seem lifeless to me early in the game. I'll go to you on this, Jacob. How do you think they come out for Game 4? I mean, you would expect desperation, right? But I don't know if I see it.
Yeah, I mean, the Bruins. I mean, culturally speaking, the Bruins are a team that doesn't really give up, and Jim Montgomery as a coach also has proven to be phenomenal at motivating this Bruins team. But I mean, we kind of talked about it a little earlier. I think this Bruins team is just gassed. I mean, don't forget, they had 47 wins to the Panthers 52, and the Bruins had 15 overtime losses this season. There was a point towards the end of the season where I think they had 15 overtime losses and 12 regular. Like they had more overtime losses than regulation losses. This Bruins team is not as strong as their record would indicate. They are getting older by the moment. With Bergeron retiring at the end of last season after the Panthers took him out in round 1 last year, the backbone of this team is starting to crumble a little bit. So despite the culture and the identity that the Bruins have cultivated over the last, I guess, probably 25 years, I think this is the end of this Bruins. I'll call it kind of a dynasty. They only have one cup out of this particular group, but they're always in that conversation. They're always cup favorites. They've been so good for so long, and I think we are seeing the end of this era of the Boston Bruins. So I think they'll come out trying, but I don't think they've got the energy. I don't think they've got it left.
Shots 32-16 tonight. You see on the bottom, power play chances 6-2, including there was that double minor late in the game that they converted. We got to talk about the other side. I don't want to get too far ahead, but I mean the Rangers are up 3-0, right? So how important is it? I'll go to Alex B on this. How important is this to not play with their food here? I mean, and get a little bit of rest into the next round.
You're in a good position right now, up 2-1 on the road. I do expect some sort of pushback by the Bruins in game 4. The Panthers know better than it's funny. The two teams in the NHL that probably know better than anybody that it's not over till it's over are the Bruins and the Panthers. Now, for obvious opposite reasons, the Panthers knocking the Bruins out last year, then the Bruins almost getting knocked out again this year if it wasn't for Pastrnak being by far the best player on that team and them getting a nice late goal against the Leafs to tie it in the third, we'd be in Toronto right now. So both teams will know it's not over till it's over. And I think for the Panthers specifically, they're going to want to get this thing, play their game the way they've played it all playoffs so far and get this thing back to Florida up 3-1. That's their goal now. Take it one game at a time. You fought for home ice. Boston may or may not have not wanted Tampa in the first round. That's what I think. So they lost the last 2 games. I'm not saying they tanked, but I'm saying they probably should have beat those 2 teams.
Right.
Florida has the home ice. So you go into Boston one more time, a place where they've done well in the playoffs. They're now, 4 of 5 in the last 5 playoff games there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, including the
4
last
in a row,
4.
I think.
4 in a row. Yeah, you come out in game 4, and it's going to be a tough place for the Bruins to beat the Panthers down 3-1 in Sunrise.
Yeah.
Alex up top. Beyond Barkov, who have been the second and third best players in this series so far for the Panthers, particularly games 2 and 3?
I'm going to go meet Forsling and Ekblad. I think they're establishing themselves as, again, one of the best top pairings in the NHL. And one of the big reasons the Bruins can't generate anything on offense, to go back to something you brought up earlier, is every time the puck goes into the zone, Forsling and Ekblad are getting it right back out. And you don't have to staple them to the Barkov line. So you basically have 2 shutdown lines, whatever line the Forsling Ekblad pairings with and whatever line Barkov is on. When you can basically shut down your opponent at half the time on the ice, that you're going to win a lot of games. So that's why I'm going to say Ekblad and Forsling are the 2 second and third most important players so far for the Panthers.
Well, Jacob, I mean, wasn't Ekblad probably the Panthers' worst player in game 1? I mean, he was not. We went through it, right? I mean, he was on the ice for every mistake. So what changed here?
Honestly, I think it's just that the team just needed to shake the rust off. They dispatched Tampa so quickly. They had a long time to rest. Boston was still coming in hot. They were still coming in with that adrenaline after Game 7 against Toronto, and they were just able to capitalize. Once the Panthers figured that out and kind of got their legs back underneath them, the series changed. That was one of Ekblad's worst games of his career. Was Game 1 of this series. We all know that that's not who Aaron Ekblad is. We know that Game 1 Ekblad is not the Florida Panthers defenseman Aaron Ekblad, the first overall pick, the Calder winner, the all-star. We know that that's not Aaron Ekblad. This is who Aaron Ekblad is when he's on his game. And he was just off his game in game one. The whole team was. He was just kind of the culprit. But they figured it out. They got it back. They got their mojo back. They got their legs back. And this is we got our Aaron Ekblad back.
I want to give Maurice a little credit here too, because I mean, again, adjusting the lines in the last game. Seems like they waited until the right time to bring Bennett back. I know there was some question about exactly, when that would happen. They also kind of played the rope-a-dope with it a little bit today by throwing him on the fifth line in the morning skate, and then he ended up playing close to the game, which I'm sure Boston probably expected that he was going to play when he was on the ice this morning. But again, they didn't really totally give it away. But to me, the biggest thing about him is it's just demeanor at this point. Like they've been through this last year, and there's a calmness about him. And also I like the fact that after the last game, like he didn't back down from any of the physicality of it. He didn't apologize for it. And I think that's necessary, in a series like this. I think that matters. And I think sometimes we don't give him enough credit. Jay says here, turnovers are the only thing giving Boston hope. And they did clean that up for the most part. Yeah. In this game until the end. And then this one, from Mike, third and fourth line depth is huge. Cousin Hell's out was a surprise. Where did we think that was going to go? I'll go to Alex up top on that. You mentioned Cousins might have been the one guy you might have sat, right? So that one didn't stun you too much.
It didn't, and it didn't for a multitude of reasons. One, you've got size in Lorentz to combat Boston's size, so I wouldn't sit him. You're not sitting Stenlund because he's been just that much better this season. And Kyle Okposo's been very, very good. So then you start talking about Nick Cousins, who hasn't done anything to deserve to be dropped. But if there's anyone that's going to take a stupid penalty of those four guys, it's Nick Cousins. If there's anyone that's going to do something that really hurts you, it's Nick Cousins. So to me, it was an easy decision that, you take your biggest potential liability off the ice, and, you've now got a bottom six that you are really, really happy with.
Yeah.
First, before we close this thing, I'm going to let Alex B close the deal for us here. I want to thank everybody who's joining us tonight. We appreciate it. I see some of our regulars on the Heat coverage who've jumped over here. So, hop on the bandwagon here for the next month or more, because we'll be doing more of these shows as we go forward. Also, we'll be on Playback too, playback.tv/5RSN, and Alex is going to be at all the home games once they return here. So a lot more coverage coming up on this team, and obviously I might join you for practice across the street, Alex, now that they've moved to my neighborhood. Do the Panthers remind you of the 90s Red Wings? That's an are we talking about the Fedorov, Yzerman? Is that those Red Wings?
I wasn't alive, but
that's the crazy thing. Like, if we're going to go back to 80s and 90s hockey, I'll actually win a conversation with you because you were not alive. And I was at Nassau Coliseum I would have been there for Tonelli to Nystrom, but my brother wanted to go see the circus at MSG instead. So I watched the game at 7 years old from a bar at MSG.
Was that a Knicks game?
Well, yes. Well, at that time, actually, the Knicks, you got Ewing at that time, but that was around the time they drafted him, just about. But I actually lived in a neighborhood with a lot of the Islanders. Butch Goring built an ice rink for my friend in his backyard. So I was those Islander teams. You chose your friends in New York if they were Islander or Ranger fans, and I was not a Ranger fan. So I will let my objectivity go away if the Panthers play them in the next series. But I don't know about the Red Wings. I mean, I guess from a talent perspective, those Red Wings were loaded, obviously. There's 7 Hall of Famers on those teams.
All the odds.
All the odds, and then Vernon wasn't bad in net either. They had a couple of goalies that they had during that period of time. I don't know about that kind of overwhelming talent, but they do look like the more talented team in this series. I'll leave it at that. The
Panthers don't have a Nick Lidstrom.
No, that's true.
Start there.
Yeah, Ekblad is not Lidstrom.
Better off. Well, they do have better off.
Yeah. I'm not going to apples to apples between.
Well, Barkov and Fedorov.
conversation.
I would say
Barkov and
Barkov
Fedorov.
is like a Fedorov. Both guys want to play.
Barkov's more like a
youth
Datsuk though, and he wasn't there till the early 2000s.
Or a Probert.
Yeah.
They don't have that kind of power winger like a Pro. Well, I guess Kachuk would be their Probert, I guess.
I don't know.
There are no Proberts anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know about. People are probably surprised I could actually hold this conversation because they used to be doing NBA. Alex, take us home here. What are we expecting now? Where does this series go?
All right, so Florida's going to have to come out just as they did in game 3. They didn't come out that hot in game 2, so I'm not going to say like game 2. Come out, play a full 60 like you did in game 3. You're going to take the Bruins out at TD Garden if that happens. So all the mindset has to be getting this thing done and then getting it back to Sunrise with a 3-1 lead. Sam Bennett was huge, as the other guys have mentioned. Brad Marchand didn't return in the third period. We'll find out what happens there. That's a big loss. Not just the captain, but Brad Marchand can still play puck. And shout out Gustav Forsling. He's a top 5 defensive defenseman that can also do offense in the NHL. If the Norris was voting on pure defensive abilities, he would be a top 3 candidate, but it's obviously an offensive award. And Speaking of offensive awards, Gustav Forsling is only 2 points away from jumping or tying Jonathan Huberdeau for most points in the playoffs in Panthers franchise history. I think that's like 8-7. So yeah, a defenseman doing that's kind of impressive. 19.
What do you think, John? What do you think, Jonathan? What is Jonathan Huberdeau thinking right now?
He's making a lot of money. So
yeah, Ethan.
I know he's making a lot of money.
I'm sure he's wiping his tears with his $10 million contract. I think he's probably.
I know, but it's like he was gone just before the going got good here.
There might be a bit of a correlation there.
Yeah, well, I mean that's one of the riskiest trades in South Florida sports history, and one of the biggest payoffs. Actually, and I think that there's a certain boldness there that I think other teams in this market could probably take a lesson from. There's a lot of things the Marlins could take lessons from, but we don't have enough time for that. We want to thank our friends over at jerseys305.com. Check that out tonight. Okay, I don't know. You dropping more jerseys over there? I think he is. So he'll have more Panther jerseys on there. You know, the Beret one, you can wear that one with pride. That was none of that era was really his fault. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5. Follow these guys at Panthers Poutine, Panthers Pori, Panthers whatever we're calling it. They'll be on with us a little bit more often. I know that their other partner wanted to be here tonight, but he's at a concert at Hard Rock, I believe. So he'll join us another night. Happy birthday, TJ. Follow Alex Bomber on his coverage. Thank you, David Eversole, for staying up late and producing. It's fun to do something here other than just the Heat and the Dolphins. We'll do more of this. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.